Well, I think there's two questions within one question to begin with. There's one question about initiatives, which means obviously something new. What are we going to do new? The other one is an issue of policy. Policy deals in governance. So you have to bring policy issues with governance issues, which has a string and series of things that need to happen and which hasn't happened in the past. So let me give you an example. Let's say we want to build a land management law. We've been in this now. I initiated this 10 years ago, and we've yet to been able to bring it to community. The question is why? Why haven't we been able to take the issue of land tenure and bring it to ours? It's our land. Why is it still in the government's hands? After 10 years, and we've had very little engagement with the community over that sensitive issue. And it is a sensitive issue because there are various points of view with regard to land ownership within Chippewa of the Thames First Nation. And what does that really mean? And so I think the very first thing that we have to start before we start making laws is you have to have the very first law, which would flow from the Chinooktagewin, which is, how do we make laws under the Chinooktagewin? Because there has to be a consistency. You can't just pull laws in out of the spur of the moment and say, we're going to make this law. There has to be a way in which we make those laws. How do we engage the public? What should go to referendum? What should go to community vote? What can be done within chief and council as a lawmaking body? What is the authority of chief and council? Where does those authorities begin and end? All of those kind of governance issues need to be explored, and people need to have an understanding of that lawmaking capacity before you just jump in and say, I'm going to make a law. So there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done, and that can only be done by engaging the community so that they have input and understanding of what those things mean and where, in fact, the chief and council have authority, and when does that authority move to their authority. How do we engage them? Because at some point in time, the chief and council is not the ultimate ruler, the people. That's what Anishinaabe means, the people. How do they become engaged and involved with the process of governance of their own community? So we have things like membership code that needs to be addressed. How, in fact, are we going to accept members into the community? What are the impacts of those acceptance mean on things like the Big Bear Creek claim through the income security program? Because it was, when that was assembled 10 years ago, it was assembled in a scientific manner, looking at what the existing population was at the time, how it was going to grow, and what was that impact going to be, and how much money was needed in order to ensure that we eradicated poverty for the elders. And we set that under a scientific method. It wasn't just done by pulling a number out of the air. It was done by a scientific method, $630 a month. And it was done because when you multiply that by 12, you're going to come to over $7,000, $7,200 approximately. When you add that on top of old age security, the basic old age security, you rise above $2,000 higher than the poverty line of Canada. That's how that was set. It wasn't set just by pulling numbers. It was set by the aggregate number of population based upon the eradication of poverty and what is the governmental programs now that are there to secure our seniors and so on. And so we eradicated one of the very first principles. We eradicated poverty for elders, which if you go back and look at the comprehensive community plan, that was one of the goals that was initiated from that. This is all done under the umbrella of a rights-based agenda. These are our rights, no one else's. We have the right to determine those things. We have the right to determine land tenure. We have the right to determine our membership. We have the right to determine our engagement process, our lawmaking capacity. How are we going to enforce those laws? So let's say we have a law about council ethics, and we have mischievous people that break those rules. What are the consequences of doing that? And how do you enforce those consequences? Do you take it to the non-Indian courts? Well, that's one way. But if you believe in our own jurisdiction, the other way is to have our own internal process. And that might require then bringing in our elders and bringing in a select panel to act as adjudicators. And let the population determine whether or not that mischievous person should deserve to sit on council. Why does the council have to enforce all the rules? There has to be a democratic appeal and redress process for everyone. So, the issue of how do you make laws is one thing, making laws is another thing, and then enforcing them becomes something else under the umbrella of Chinaktagiwan and a rights-based agenda. So fundamentally, we've spoken a lot about policy issues and policy framework, which is necessary for governance. At the same time, we have to talk about initiatives. Before we can get to initiatives, I think there's an issue of something else presently happening. And that's the need to fix some things that are broken. And some of those things that are broken right now is that we've been on a boiled water advisory. Living in southwestern Ontario, we're living in third world conditions. Why is that? It's simple. We haven't found an initiative on how to pay for it. And it's going to cost money. It's not going to be something that the government is going to pay for 100%. We're going to have to look at how, in fact, for a change, we begin to save money and make money in order to pay for that. And it's time for the citizens within Chippewa that they have to begin to pay their own way. It's not coming as a freebie. This all costs money. And some people, yes, I understand, they have a hard time coping on a daily basis, but at the same time, we have to be able to pay for things. And let's just take as an example the water system here now in Chippewa. It's going to take well over $100 million to fix this system. The government is not going to write you a check for $100 million. That means we're going to have to come up with some money. We get over $3 million annually in revenue. Annually. And we spend it all. We don't have a critical capital fund necessary. So if the system breaks down, the water system breaks down, we have no resources to turn to because we already spent the money. Why is that? In my view, that's poor management. I think we have to start setting up funds and safeguarding funds in order to fix things as they break down and save for things that we need to purchase in the future. Housing, a critical issue. Affordable housing now, there's no such thing as affordable housing. Housing is $650 a square foot to build. So if you're looking at a 1,000 square foot building for a house, a modest 3-bedroom house, you're looking at $600,000 plus for that house. That's a lot of money that most people can't afford. Roads. Our roads are in bad shape. We need to fix the infrastructure. So in order to move on, how do you ever attract investments into the community when you don't have a system that has high-speed internet, that has safe potable water, that has reliable transportation corridors, is not connected by gas, and has no high fiber within it? Those are the critical things of infrastructure. Those are the things that need to be done now. So in order to start, we've got to start changing the way we do business. We got to look more to the future and less to the now. And that's the only way this community is going to get forward. We've got to start safeguarding some of the things that we have and protecting those and improving on what we already have, and not buying everything the cheapest way possible just to put a Band-Aid over top of it. You haven't fixed the problem. You just Band-Aided it down the road. You kicked the can down the road for somebody else to fix. And that snowball keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger with the problem. It's time to stop kicking things around. It's time to start fixing things now. And we're going to have to pay for that.